everybody, what is up? And welcome back to the hashtag Lockboss Show and Giveaway. I tell you what, of course, we have a lot of great stuff going on today, including a interview with the one and only Marc Tobias. So I'll be bringing him up here in just a few moments. But until then, let me go over a couple things, make sure we're on the same page before we get going here. And first and foremost, I am posting a link in the comments to the after party in Jimmy J's Iowa Lock Docs Discord. So after the show's over today, if you want to come hang out for a little after party, you're more than welcome. Just follow that link. So, of course, we got that going on. I have a trusty Topo Chico with me here that I'll crack open. And cheers to all you out there drinking a Topo Chico or your favorite beverage of choice. All right, that's good. Perfect. Well, I hope all of you are enjoying your Tuesday and just super, super excited to talk with Marc here in just a few moments. But before we do, let's go ahead really quick and let's hop into the show and go over our post of the week. This one comes from Robert C. Robert C. says, "Hello, PJ and everyone at CLK Supplies. I've received my score using my $500 winnings. My gorgeous HPC SpeedX 9160 MC key duplicating machine came in today. I have already received my A1 spinner, my space and depth keys, my key duplication and how to make money cutting keys online course, and my free hat, which is a nice beanie. My SpeedX looks and works great. It came calibrated and everything. I checked the calibration to make sure, though. I like it. Then I drilled some holes in my bench and mounted her up, and I cut a couple keys to test her out. Now I don't have to make keys by hand anymore. Thanks again. Thanks, PJ, and everyone at CLK Supplies. You guys rule." Very cool, Robert. Well, hey, thank you. Well, first of all, congratulations on your winnings, and really glad you're putting it to good use. And thank you so much for the photo. Next up is the comment of the week, and this one comes from Pouncer Mind 863. Says, "Really happy you made this video, PJ. I am at the point in my business as a lock boss where I need repeat customers. And I think you really hit home on what a lot of us locksmiths who are trying to grow are wondering how to take the next step. Thanks again for the valuable information." Absolutely, Peltzerman. Thank you for the comment and for hanging out with us all. So, okay, so I'm pretty excited about this. Here in just a moment, I'm going to bring Marc up on the screen here. We're going to talk about his latest book, which is Tobias on Locks and Insecurity Engineering, which I have read. But before I bring him on, I just want to really quick give a quick intro here. It says, Marc Tobias is the author of 8 law enforcement and security textbooks, including Locks, Safes, and Security, and international police reference. He has lectured extensively, worked for government agencies as an investigator and prosecutor involved in major crimes, and he has consulted with the world's largest lock manufacturers. He has been issued 30 U.S. patents. So I tell you what, and that's just a short bio. I could go on for a long time. He's been around, he's done all sorts of things, and I'm really happy to have him on and talk. So without further ado, let me bring him on here. Marc, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So hopefully I did okay with your bio. You know, you've done so many things in the lock space. It's really incredible.
Yeah, actually, 20 years ago, we were the most hated guys in the industry.
Yeah. So, I mean, how has that been going from being the most hated? And that looking is about the Medico stuff, right?
Yeah, both my partner Tobias Blues Manis and I, because everybody thought we were crazy, and when we went after Medico, which is we do work for them, we love their locks, but we figured out some embedded design flaws that nobody had found, and so we wrote a book about it, which you guys are carrying, and it's honestly, it's a great case study in what can happen, what can go wrong, and so, history is history. Now everybody, I think, likes us. It's just that when we went after Medico and other lock manufacturers in the industry because of design problems, everybody thought, oh, this is all a secret. And when I used to lecture at Aloha conferences, and I tell everybody even today, there's no more secrets. It's called the internet. Everything's on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
True. So, as I was going through this, and I just have to say, I mean, this is what I think it's 700,
Yeah.
almost 700 pages here.
700 pages of nightmare to write it.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you can kind of walk me through, like, as I start kind of going through this and reading it, and it took me several sit downs, of course, to really digest it all and start to understand. And like, there is stuff. So, I grew up in the lock and key industry. I'm 40. And I essentially, from 6 years old on, was working with my dad, cutting keys, the typical small business where the kids go to work with their dads, their parents, that sort of thing. And there is stuff in this book that I have never even heard of. And more importantly, some of the stuff that you bring up from over in Europe and overseas, I mean, maybe I'm just completely ignorant and just don't know really what's going on out there, but there's a lot of stuff that you go in, like with impressioning tools and different stuff that I've just never heard of before. How long did it take you to do this?
To write the book or to figure it all out?
I mean, I'll take either answer on that one.
Well, the first answer is this was my pandemic sabbatical because for 3 years nobody could travel. So I was stuck at home. Usually I'm in Europe a lot for clients. So I lecture at Cambridge, the University of Cambridge in England. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, actually. And I lectured with a guy who died last year, sadly, who was basically the lead professor at the computing lab that was donated by Microsoft and Bill Gates. So he wrote a book which I would advise all your viewers also to buy. It's called Security Engineering. It is in its third printing. It is the classic as to what can go wrong in anything that works with microprocessors, everything. And we're in part, my partner and I are in the book, all three editions, obviously about Medico, about ASA. Ross relied on us for some input. The guy that wrote it was Ross Anderson. He was a PhD professor. So it occurred to me probably, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, when I was at Cambridge, that I could write the flip side of his book, because what a lot of the lock manufacturers are doing, not intentionally, but is called what I called insecurity engineering. And I've been using that term for at least 20, 25 years. We used to lecture at DEF CON in Las Vegas for 9 years in a row, at the hacking conference. Mm-hmm. And I took a lot of static from Aloha for doing that. In fact, they thought it was unethical. Well, now all the locksmiths are going to DEF CON. I mean, everybody's going to DEF CON. And so what the manufacturers, the reason you can open a lot of these locks is because the design engineers I teach design engineers at the University of Pittsburgh School of Engineering. We have a course on product development. They know how to make things work as far as mechanical engineers. They do not know how to break things. And this is the problem in our industry. So if you want to really boil it down, it's a lack of imagination. They don't understand bypass techniques. A lot of them are outlined in the book. And so that's a real prescription for producing even a high security lock that can be opened in seconds. And that's a real security threat, especially in today's environment. So I decided, I went to Ross and I said, what if I write a book, the flip side of your book about the mechanical side, not so much electronic, but the mechanical side of locking and access control systems. He says, I think that'd be a great idea. He introduced me to my publisher, which is Wiley, which is also his publisher. They're a global publisher, and they signed a contract, and 3 years later they had the book. So, but that was the impetus for the book, is really that is what's going on. And a lot of the manufacturers admit it. They have some problems finding design engineers. They don't know history. That's why I spent a lot of time in the book going into history for hundreds of years ago in lock design. Because as you know, as a locksmith, not much has changed. The mechanisms are the same. The only, I think there was two really innovative inventions in the 1900s. One was Abloy with their sidebar and disc design. One was what the guys came up with in the garage in Salem, Virginia for Medico, which I think was really groundbreaking. And the Briggs & Stratton car lock from 1935, the General Motors introduced with a sidebar. So, and pretty much everybody today now employs one form of sidebar or another because they work if you do it right. So the problem is, and you know, there's pin tumbler locks, which is about 95% of America and a lot of the world. There's lever locks, there's warded locks. That's about it. And so if you really look at it, the mechanisms haven't changed that much. Some of the attacks have become more sophisticated. The tooling is more sophisticated. The metallurgy is more sophisticated. The attack techniques with different tools, like with John Fall over in England, are more sophisticated, but the locks are the same. And so I thought it would be important in the book to go back into the history from Brahma, from Barron, Alfred C. Hobbs, all these names that probably most American locksmiths don't know.
I don't, for sure.
Yeah, well, this all started in England in 1851. There was a worldwide, I'll call it it was an exposition and trade show. It was like sort of a world fair of locks.
Okay.
Technology. So the Brahma company, and I interviewed in the multimedia edition of our book, I interviewed the great-great-grandson of Brahma. Brahma produced the unpickable lock for 40 years. They were sort of the Medico of England. And so I actually went and met with Jeremy, and I figured out how the American locksmith, well, let me digress. There was a huge contest to raise awareness in the industry. Like, I don't know, maybe $40,000 reward if anybody could open this lock, because nobody could. So Mr. Alfred C. Hobbs, from Boston, who wrote a great book about the subject, he came over to England and took up the challenge and came in for a couple hours a day for 3 weeks to the lock shop. And basically, he impressioned the lock.
Really?
I didn't know what that was. And after 3 weeks, he walked in with a key and opened it. And that set everybody on their ear. And because there was a lot of insecurity and poor designs in the industry in England mainly, I spent a lot of time in Wolverhampton, which is where Chubb Safes were, Millenhall, all the safe companies were there. So that's really the impetus for the book that I wrote. It's very detailed. I'd love every locksmith to read it. They're reading it in Europe because, my mother, who died at a very old age, my dad was a design engineer from Carnegie Tech here in Pittsburgh. My mother used to ask me when I gave her the second edition of Lock, Safes, and Security, which is about 1,400 pages. She says, "What the hell is so complicated about sticking a key in a lock?" And I said, "Well, that's not the complicated part. The complicated part is making it work securely and properly." And the public has no idea how complicated this industry is. It's legally complicated, security wise, technically wise, regulation wise, standards wise. All the locks you guys sell, they're complicated. And even if they're not high security locks, they're complicated. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to write a pretty exhaustive treatise about legal, technical, intellectual property, patents, standards, bypass techniques, very high-tech tools. I'm sure 99% of your audience, because they have no need to, nor can they buy some of the tools, are not aware that there are some tools that you can insert into locks that will, in seconds, read the length of each pin and coming out with a code so you can put it into a key machine.
Yes. You know what? And you talk about those, you show photos of them in the book. Yeah. And like, why do you think, I've just never heard of it.
You wouldn't have. Here's the problem. Your job mainly, locksmiths in America, in Europe, they're a little different. A lot of them are engineers. Locksmiths in America, they sell, they maintain, they install, they update keying systems, they cut keys, sometimes you design or implement master key systems. That's what you guys do. Mm-hmm. So, first of all, the government tools that some of which I talked about in the book, some of which I could not talk about because I have agreements with some of the manufacturers that make the tool designers, because I don't want to compromise covert entry teams that work for government agencies. That's why I didn't list the locks, for example, that the electronic key decoders could open.
So something with that, if I can ask, so maybe this was 2015. As the years go on, they kind of blur, right? But a while ago, there was a U.S. company. Okay, so let me rewind a little bit. I just want to see if you know anything about this, because I've always wondered what's happened. So years ago, there was a guy who had contacted me. Let's just probably say it was 2012, 2015. And he had a son that was some sort of a engineer of some sort. And he made this tool for autos that you stick this probe in and you hit a button and it just decodes it like this. And I believe he had sold some. And then later on, it kind of goes away and it looks like someone had bought his patent or something. And they made some news that they came out with this impressioning tool you stick in and it just quickly decodes it. And then it just they've all went away. And I've recently, after we started emailing, I started doing some Google searches, like trying to re-find it just to ask you about it, because you talk about so many things similar in the book. Do you know anything about this at all?
No, the only thing that calls to mind, which is totally different. You remember when you could open cars by banging on the bumpers? Because they used a pneumatic system in the case of a crash that the doors would unlock. So of course everybody figured out, I think one of them was Mercedes, that if you kick the back bumper hard enough, it'd pop all the doors open. But Yeah, great idea. Yeah, really. Perfect. Just like the geniuses, I think, at Toyota that killed quite a few people because the people were driving down the road and the cars would turn off and they lose hydraulics and they couldn't steer the car because the key rings were moving back and forth because they never thought of it. This is one of the major problems in lock design and testing. It's a lack of imagination.
Yes, and so one of the thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And one of the things I wanted to briefly kind of hit on in your book is where you talk about the standards for locks and safes, and you talk a little bit about keeping the standards up to date. But the part that really caught me was the lack of incentives for the examiners to find flaws, and I think kind of what you were talking about fits in with that.
Yeah, they don't have any. I mean, a lot of the testing is done by the lock manufacturers themselves, or they go to a private lab, but most of the time, I think they do it themselves and certify it. So tell me the incentives. Now, I would think, I mean, we work with several major manufacturers. Don't get me wrong. They want to find all the problems because let me tell you, recalls, bad PR, lawsuits, they're very expensive. I can tell you that as a lawyer. And so it's not that they want to manufacture deficient or defective products. They just can't often find the problems. That's why we've been working for them for a really long time. And my partner, Toby, is brilliant at it and much better than I am. I understand a lot more of the theoretical than he does, but he was a 40-year working locksmith from Venezuela and then Miami. And so we hooked up almost 20 years ago. And so that's the problem. You can exploit a lot of design issues in locks because you guys see them every day. And, you make money doing that, especially like opening safes. So if all the lock manufacturers, first of all, a lot of them cut corners. They don't want to spend the money on real R&D. We get brought into lock designs, a high level, to figure out what can go wrong early. That's really what you guys want to know. What can go wrong and how do I exploit it? And so that's in part what the book is about.
It is. And part of that is another. I'm sorry. Were you saying something? I don't know if I cut you off there. Oh, okay. So, which kind of brings me to my next point a little bit is on where you talk about advanced attacks on key control and alike, right? And with like 3D printing out now and those sort of things, it's a kind of a whole new ball game, right? When it comes to this.
Well, probably 15 years ago at least, I interviewed the lead engineer at Stratasys, which has a lot of the IP for 3D printing. I met him in Minneapolis, and then I sent the interview to all of our clients because they didn't understand what you could do with 3D printing. So, and a lot of manufacturers made claims that their locks could not be 3D printed. Now, we're working with some clients right now that have come up with some patented designs that they're finalizing that may, in fact, produce a key that may be exceedingly difficult to duplicate. But right now, I mean, we were at DEF CON lecturing with next to some MIT students who knocked off the Schlage Primus, which was a patented system, very clever by my friend Bo Whedon from Sweden. He designed all of those, and they figured out how to print it. And this was at least 10, maybe 15 years ago, and it was a big deal in the media. And Schlage, they went crazy. And they said, we're going to sue these guys for patent infringement. I actually happened to be a ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when they called me. Panic stricken. How do we stop this? I says, you don't. I said, first of all, these kids were MIT students. They were smart enough not to attack patents that hadn't expired because they knew you guys would go after them. That was number one. Number two, I said, your problem is that all of your keys are just a little piece of metal and with no electronic element. So everything can be copied. And one of the chapters in the book is about what I call hybrid attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're familiar with Schlage Primus, which has got side bit milling as a second set of finger pins, and if you add Everest to that with the undercut to protect the keyway, well, okay, that really looks difficult, but you can 3D print all of that. And we've gone after high security locks, some of which are the best in the world, with hybrid attacks, where you print what I call a carrier, and then you put springs or movable elements. So it's a complex key, but it's not complex to produce. And the bottom line is you can compromise restricted keyways. So there you go with key control. Now, that's not all of them. A lot of manufacturers are really working at this. But at the end of the day, any metal key can basically be printed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And something, I don't know if I can quote yet exactly, but in the book, you say something about just because it's patented doesn't mean it's secure.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. It doesn't mean when it comes to that, which, brings me to really my favorite thing that you say in the book, because on the front level, it seemed really simple to me. It's kind of like, when I read it, I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense, like, of course. But then I'm like, it's kind of like a light bulb moment for me, which is when you say a key isn't ever what opens a lock.
No, the rule is there's 180 rules in the book. And
yes.
I went through 100 PowerPoint lectures that Toby and I have given over the years. So every time we do a lecture, I like to talk about rules, design rules. So the first rule that I ever came up with, the key never unlocks the lock. And everybody says, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Of course the key unlocks locks. No, in 95% of the time, it really doesn't. What the key does is actuate the mechanism that allows you to unlock the lock. And I'll tell you, again, not picking on one of my best friends at Medico, but in 2000, because they make, I think, some of the best locks in America, they have a deadbolt that's the best, the Maxim deadbolt. And this is on probably millions of businesses. It's a serious deadbolt cylinder. So we were looking at another manufacturer's deadbolt to figure out what the design problem was. And we sort of fell into this by accident. And Medico's fixed all this, okay, a long time ago. But they had a lot of heartburn over doing it. Ask Wired magazine. So if you want to read a great article, read the May 2009 Wired piece on Medico that they covered us. So the problem with the Medico deadbolt Maxim was that, first of all, it was an open keyway. And I did a lot of work in the book on open keyways and openings and use of shims and whatever. So the problem is that nobody ever thought that really the security of all these deadbolts is a little end cap that's held on with a couple screws. So we figured out, and in the case of Medico, there were 83,000, as I recall, diameter screws, which is nothing. There was 2 of them. Some of them have 3, some of them have 4, it doesn't matter. So we took and made a little piece of spring steel, and we whacked it twice in the keyway screws. once we sheared the 2 screws, there was nothing to stop us from manipulating what the tailpiece controlled. So we took a $2 ace screwdriver. This is all in the book and on our website. We put the screwdriver and made it like a fork. And we turned the tailpiece and we opened the lock. 30 seconds. That now they fixed it urgently. So if you read our Medico book, because there's a lot of humor in that book, a lot of sarcasm, much to Medico's chagrin. So they came up with an urgent fix. The problem is that the fix allowed us to open it in a different way. We figured out how to go in. You learn how to pick locks. Most locksmiths learn how to pick locks.
Yeah.
A lot of locksmiths aren't as good as 15-year-old kids at picking locks, but they know how to pick locks. So we figured out the normal way. When I was a kid, I was taught to pick locks by a locksmith in Denver, either clockwise or counterclockwise with torque on the plug. Okay, but there's another way to pick the lock. The other way is that you put either a paper clip or something to grab the plug. Once you break the tailpiece link that holds that lock together, you pull on the plug, you put reverse tension, and you pick it forward. I don't know that anybody ever thought of it because nobody had the problem. Yeah, see, you're thinking about that. Oh.
Yeah, I'm like, as you're talking, I'm visualizing, what does that do?
Yeah, well, you can pick it the same way. The theory of picking is still about tolerance, an order of picking. It's just that rather than going that way, you're going that way. And so the chapter in the Medico book I entitled "Pulling the Plug on Medico."
Pulling the plug.
which is what we did. We pulled the plug out of the lock.
Yeah, pull the plug.
And then we went in with a screwdriver, manipulated the connecting piece, and opened it.
Yes. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And so, Mark, with you saying that, like something that clicked and why my favorite part of the book is the rule is a key is in every what opens
It doesn't unlock the lock.
It doesn't unlock the lock. Yes.
Right.
And all of a sudden, like the light bulb kind of went on for me with the aspect of when you're looking at opening up a lock, a key, of course, is the easiest, and you even point out, right? It's the easiest way to open it up. There's picking and all of that, but in so many different attacks, like over the years on the different types of locks, even the ones that you were just mentioning, or even like, the American locks and that sort of thing, is realizing when you start, like when you take one apart and you figure out the mechanism that's actually opening the lock, all of a sudden it makes sense to me, all of these different ways that over the years people have attacked locks. And sometimes it is picking it, and other times it can be using something to bypass in there, like you described. So
yeah, shims or impressioning.
Yep.
Shock and vibration. One of my favorite pals is Sir Isaac Newton from 400 years ago. I just had a picture taken next to his picture at Trinity College in England, which is where he got his degree, because the laws of physics the design engineers forget about. And we open a lot of locks based on Newton's first and third law of motion. And this is what started the whole Medico controversy, was lock pumping with the little 11-year-old girl at DEF CON. And so, everybody needs to pay attention to all this. It's all in the book, but it's all interrelated and it's all complicated.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I remember reading on that, in full confession, I went to public school here in Idaho. So sometimes when I'm reading some of that, I'm like, well, it's a lot to comprehend. But,
yeah. Well, that's because it's Idaho. All you guys know about is potatoes.
Exactly.
and making French fries for McDonald's.
That's exactly it. Guilty as charged.
And did you live near Ted Kaczynski when he was making bombs?
So yeah, we're actually, I mean, from where he was, I think we're about 3 hours away from where I'm sitting is where he was. So maybe a little longer than that, but yeah, right around there.
Yeah, another brilliant guy. Actually, he was a very good engineer. He was just nuts. And he wouldn't have been caught unless his brother turned him in after he
Mm-hmm.
published his manifesto. Really, really interesting case. And I was also going to say, Harry Shearer, who's one of Aloha's brilliant instructors, and we've been working together for 25 years. We produce a series of 130 videos on opening locks and safes called DAME, Defense Against Methods of Entry. And that a lot of locksmiths have bought him over the years. Harry is just brilliant at what he does. And he instructs for Aloha and the military and the Bureau. Um, I would recommend, a lot of your viewers probably have already bought them. And already, I have those videos online now.
You do. And where would it be best for people who are viewing this to watch those that
Well,
Dame's?
you have to pay for it because I spent a lot of money to build the website so you couldn't steal the video
Sure.
because we spent a lot of time producing it. LSS-dame.com.
Oh, okay, and let me type this in here. So it's LSS.
Dash DAME, which stands for Defense Against Methods of Entry.com.
Let me just put this just to make sure. LSS Dame DAME.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Let me just put it in there just so people can see that.
Hopefully the site hasn't gone down, of course, for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Mark, if you have a few more minutes, I wanted to make sure, James Randolph, if you want to come on the back end here and hop on live, now is the time. As we, I want to talk about a couple other quick things with you, Mark, if possible.
Sure,
which is,
of course.
you talk about in the book the most popular bike lock in the world opened with a ballpoint pin, which led to around 350,000 locks being recalled. Now, I do have to say on this one that I can't remember exactly where I found out about this, but I was working, my dad and his lock shop, he was having a meeting in the morning, and that meeting, and I had learned this, and I went to his shop in that meeting. He was having a whole locksmith meeting, and I go up front and I see he has a kryptonite bike lock sitting up there. And long and behold, those Bic pins were way more popular. I don't see them nearly like I used to years ago.
No.
And I grabbed one without even trying before the meeting. And when it came to my turn to speak, I grab it and I put it in there and I start just kind of getting weird with it.
You're impressioning it.
And it opened. And I mean, everyone else was like, okay, did you just do a magic trick or what's going on? And I was just as surprised because I had just learned it. But I'm really curious on your take on all that.
Well, first of all, we're the guys that put out the security alert in 2006, 2003. Myself, Matt Fiddler. It was just a classic case of not connecting the dots. It cost Kryptonite $10 million to recall all the locks. They were very good about it, but it took them a while to respond to the media. I got calls. We used to have the website security.org before I sold it in 2018. Now our website securitylaboratories.org. And so the problem, the design engineers, when I met with them at Schlag, they really didn't, first of all, they didn't understand how to impression pin tumbler locks. Kryptonite was designed around an axial pin tumbler lock. I think it was a 7-pin lock. So they didn't understand impressioning, and they also didn't understand that the diameter of the plug for the lock they chose was exactly the same diameter as a big pin. So if you take soft plastic and understand either rudimentary impressioning, you're going to open the lock because you basically create a key out of that plastic. And I mean, I was getting calls from media all over the United States. Why can I open my $150 bike lock with a 19-cent pin? Because the design engineers never connected the dots. That's why it's in the book.
Yeah, and it's remarkable seeing how that works, and it's almost like the big. Hey James, I see him in the chat here. Hey, so that link I sent you from Discord, you want to click on that link so you can come on, so I can bring you up on stage. All right, sorry about that, Mark. So the it's like the plastic of the big pin was like almost like the perfect softness.
Well,
to
it
make
was. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
They just didn't understand impressioning and pin tumbler locks and the diameter of the keyway. It was a perfect storm, and frankly, it was just stupid engineering.
Mm-hmm. Which kind of brings it back to one of the first things that we were talking about, which is the lack of incentives.
Yeah,
to find the flaws. And
they want to pass certification for UL and for BHMA, and they're not paid extra. You know, if I was in charge of a standards testing lab, I'd say, listen, $5,000 if you find more problems above your salary, because it's not that these guys aren't good. It's not their job. Their job is to see that they comply with the written standards.
mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. So they're really, yeah, you tell me the incentives for surpassing the standards. Now, some manufacturers do, but most of the certification folks, all they care about is meeting the standards so they can get certified. So they can advertise that they meet either the 15630 spec, the UL 437 spec, which, by the way, almost every locksmith that I've run into over the years, they all think that UL 437 is a high security standard. It's not. It's a commercial security standard.
Okay.
It's flat not. It's referenced in the high security standard by BHMA, which is the Builders Hardware Manufacturers Association. Their 156.30 is the civilian high security standard in the United States. Okay, they reference UL 437, and there was a big argument about lock bumping that I got into when ASTM and BHMA, everybody was trying to figure out how to address lock bumping and how many strikes it would take and this and that. Well, I can tell you from opening a lot of locks that some of them you can do in one strike, some of them you can do in 5 minutes, some of them you can't do, some of them you can't do and come back 10 minutes later and open them. It is a random process. Ask Billy Edwards, who used to work for Master Lock forever, another very bright locksmith who's retired now. You know, and I think he did a video for Master Lock showing how the system worked, and I think he got some patents, if memory serves me correctly. And you can still bump open a lot of locks.
Sure.
Even high security locks. So who's this now?
Okay, sorry, this is James.
Hey, James.
Yeah, I heard about you coming on, and PJ had realized what a fan I was of your work already, and he asked if I might want to come on and talk to you for a minute.
Yeah, of course. Be my guest.
I actually was thinking about you even before he had mentioned you, and I had a question for you. Back in DEF CON 2019, you said something, and I wish I could quote it perfectly, but I probably can't. But you said something along the lines of, we thought it was funny opening a lock with the hairdryer, but the manufacturer didn't.
Well, they never find any humor in what we do. I can tell
No, but you never tell us.
Yeah, no. I'll tell you what that was. I don't remember that it was 2019, but we were tasked to look at a lock design in Europe, a dual profile cylinder that was invented by some software guys who didn't know anything about lock design.
Mhm.
But they thought they had figured out a really cool thing to use nitinol wire. Do you know what that is?
Okay,
Okay.
I have heard of it. Yeah.
Okay, so for your audience, nitinol wire has some very special characteristics that if you put a current through it, it changes its shape, and it's got a memory. So you can basically program it to be any size and shape you want. So these guys decided that they were going to design a lock based on nitinol wire that would act as a blocking element in the lock. Really great idea. So we were tasked to look at it because our client was looking at buying the intellectual property. So we looked at it and we figured out, well, this is really a stupid idea because we used a hair dryer and a little handheld torch as well. Anything that would generate heat would cause the wire to change shape. So we opened the lock. So that was the story. Not a very bright design. So our client never bought the intellectual property. It's just, again, it was a total lack of imagination. Because the first thing you ought to look at, how can this fail? That's what's important in my life. You know, everybody says you're Mr. Gloom and Doom. Well, I am because I get paid to be that way, both in the engineering side and as a lawyer. What can go wrong? How do we make this fail? Because if you can open a lock, compromise a lock, it's a failure.
Now, would it be fair to say the lockpicking lawyer kind of stole your YouTube handle? That maybe you were the original lockpicking lawyer?
Actually, I think, because I started doing video on the internet in '95. He has now had over 1.5 billion hits. So I can't compete with that. And now we don't lecture at DEF CON anymore because we have a number of clients. We all have non-disclosure agreements. So we can't talk about any attacks if they even tangentially relate to what our other clients design. And, you know, everybody in the industry has got similar designs. There's nothing really new. After the Moss Hamilton electronic combination lock, you know, starting with the X07 and Medico, you tell me in the industry, especially in mechanical locks, tell me what's been innovative, really. Anybody can do software now. As I pointed out in the book, enough money you can build a lock and sell it. That doesn't mean it's secure, but anybody can get into the lock manufacturing business. It costs a really lot of money to do it, and service and support. But, you know, and there's some European lock manufacturers now that have entered North America in both Canada and the United States. They're going to spend a really lot of money in America because they don't have the support. You know, it takes a long time to build product support, customer service, manufacturing. But, you know, everybody asks, why haven't you designed a lock? Well, I have a lot of patents. And I've got some patents on electronic locks, some mechanical locks, but it's not practical. You have to have billions of dollars in back of you to really manufacture. And so I lost your initial question, but you know, that's the answer.
Yeah, I was just riffing on the fact that you were probably the original lockpicking lawyer. Since you are a lawyer,
I was.
Yeah,
I was, but I didn't make a career out of it the way the lockpicking lawyer did. And I got to say, because I've had a lot of input from guys that know who he is, a lot of his stuff wasn't real. It was tricks, sort of like Houdini. I think his videos are terrific. I think he does a great job. He has people working for him now, but it's the same old problem. You know, if all these locks were designed properly, a lot of this would be mitigated. You know, it is, a lot of it is insecurity engineering. And we lectured on that at DEF CON for 9 years. And I, you know, even before that, I thought I coined the term because that's exactly what it is. And what do you do?
You know what? I'm actually I'm primarily just a hobbyist in electronic and cyber, cybersecurity stuff and in physical security.
What
I
do you do, what
enjoy
do
it.
you do for work?
I do all that. That's just stuff I do for fun, and I do nothing really related to that kind of stuff in my day job here. So
So are you calling from a penitentiary?
no, 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 no. That's a failed background situation.
Yeah.
I
Right.
didn't have enough time to turn that on.
So,
Yeah, the logistics is really my last job title, honestly.
you know, I got to tell you a quick story. Right after I can't remember if it was a Medico book or another book came out. I was invited to a sports lockpicking pizza party in Hamburg, Germany. And I had just got off an airplane, and there's all these kids around, and adults, and doctors, and lawyers, and housewives. And there's this huge table full of locks. And they threw a lock to me, an East German high security lock, says, go ahead and open. Well, I couldn't open it. You know, I said, first of all, I don't have my tools. But, you know, if you don't know a specific lock or a specific type of lock, you're probably not going to open it. You need to understand the mechanism inside before you can really, especially unless it's just a vanilla pin tumbler lock, you may not open it. And these were some fairly sophisticated East German locks. So I thought to myself, I'm never doing this again.
Okay.
Yeah. So does that answer your questions?
Oh yeah, one last thing. I wondered, have you messed with any of the later generations of smart key?
Well, what do you mean the later generations of smart key?
I think the last talk I saw, you were probably maybe generation 3 was the latest.
Who's smart key? Are you talking about Kwikset?
Oh, Kwikset, yes, Kwikset.
Yeah, okay. I don't think it's smart key. I think their trademark is something else. But you know what? We were attacking Kwikset for a long time. And then we went to work for them because they had a real problem 10, 15 years ago in their design. And their problem was that we could torque open their cylinders if we inserted a key with the right depths on it to basically move their weight sliders to a middle position. We could put torque and open the lock. This was a huge liability problem. In fact, it was such a liability problem that there was a security guard in Orlando. I was an expert witness in the case that saw some of our videos online and entered an apartment that he was supposed to be guarding, raped and killed the 21-year-old girl. And so, so this also really does have real world consequences. Kwikset totally redesigned their sidebar. The reason they did that is in part because we took a 1935 Briggs & Stratton cylinder that was the original General Motors lock that had a sidebar design that worked. And we got them to change their sidebar design. You're not torquing those locks open now. And they've also cleaned up their tolerances. I think, honestly, they were bought by Assa Abloy a few years ago, which I thought was a great move, into the sector. I think they're really good locks now. They're not high security. They don't represent as high security, but I think they really cleaned up their act. I was on television a lot 15 years ago, opening their locks, bumping them open, just like little 11-year-old Jenna Lynn was at DEF CON. And so, but now you're not going to do that. And frankly, they didn't realize when they designed that programmable lock, actually they copied an Italian lock from Rialda. And there's also a Winfield design they didn't realize that it was bump proof because there's no traditional set of tumblers like they use in their sliders. You know, it's a very clever design, and you know, it's functional. I don't know honestly how many people reprogram their locks. When you put quickset on your house, you probably don't reprogram it. But it's, you know, it's a nice feature, especially for construction, you know, to change the keys. But otherwise, I think they're very good now. They didn't used to be, but they are now.
You know, that's interesting because I'd have to ask around, but it seems a lot of times, even with those reprogrammable locks, a locksmith ends up coming out and reprogramming them anyways. Interestingly enough.
Well, no, actually, there's a tool that was sent to us. I think I referenced it in the book.
Yeah.
Lock Defeat Technology, I think. They have a tool that you can go in and read the sliders.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know, it's a neat tool. So I put it in the book. I think most locksmiths just drill them. You know, they're not that expensive, and you guys' time is valuable. And so why screw around with trying to decode them? I think we lectured at DEF CON once on how to decode them. But, you know, honestly, the locks are so inexpensive. Why bother? Just drill and put a new one in.
I think, honestly, every locksmith would like to do that, but sometimes the customers have other ideas.
Yeah, but as long as they're reprogrammable, you can make them work with the same key.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and James, he actually goes through quite a bit of it in his book around that too. But yeah, I think it's funny a little bit though with the smart key, even with its over the years problems. At the same time, many locksmiths, until they get a lot of experience with them, it's one of the most difficult locks that they encounter.
well, you can't pick them. Now that's their reprogrammable. The slider, the pin tumbler locks, they're relatively easy to pick. There's nothing difficult about them. You can bump them. We'll use them for teaching, for bumping. But the minute you get into their reprogrammable, they can be very difficult to pick because there's nothing to, you know, first of all, it's a sidebar, and you know, they have security gates, and they're okay, you know, especially for consumers. They're just fine. Put an alarm system in. You know, locks aren't going to keep the bad guys out anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and if you have a key control problem, you know, Quickset is not about key control.
Right.
The high security ASA, Medico, Schlage Primus, they're about key control. If you want to make sure or make it more difficult to copy keys, you know, or go into electronic credentials, you know. ASA Abloy got some very cool electronic cylinders. You know, there's a lot of them in America now. iLock out of Finland, which is in the book, and we lectured about it. They're an energy harvesting lock, no batteries. It's an electronic element in the key. They've entered the North American market. Honestly, I don't know how they're doing. I think they're probably bidding against the major manufacturers, but I don't know how successful. They're going to spend a lot of money in America to make an impact. But they make some really cool. They make some cylinders, and they also have NFC padlocks. And very slick. A lot of manufacturers make NFC-based locks now. I think the problem with those is the access time to open them. Like iLock is like 5 seconds. I think that's pretty common, 3, 4, 5 seconds. I don't want to wait. You know, everybody's used to insert the key, turn the plug. Well, you can't do that with NFC. So that's the story.
Awesome. Well, hey, James, I'm really happy that you're able to come on and hang out with us for a few. So hopefully I'll see you here in a little bit in the after party.
All right. Thanks a lot for answering my questions.
No, pleasure talking to you.
It was great talking to you too.
Yeah, order the book.
Yeah,
I absolutely will. Yes. Talk to you
Thank
later.
very good.
Bye.
Thank you. We'll see you. Well, Mark, hey, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and hanging out and being able to talk through your book and your experience. And it's been a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Well, listen, do me a favor, would you? Because we'll put it on our website also. Send me the video.
Okay.
Just send me the link or whatever, or the file, and we'll put it on our securitylaboratories.org website. And then you might want to post the book information for all your viewers and customers.
Yes. Yep. Yes, we will. We'll link the book to this video.
And like I said, everybody might want to read, even though it's old. They might want to read what we did in our case study on Medico, because everybody knows how good their locks are. And it was like a 12-step program to figure out how to bump and pick their locks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. So
I'm glad I got to join you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I haven't read that book yet. I figured I'd start with this one. And I tell you what, Mark, you really give your money's worth with as much as in this thing here.
I think there's a discount right now from Wiley or on Amazon. I'm not involved in that. It's not my problem. But I think right now at least they were running a discount on it.
Okay.
So it's available on Amazon. It should be available on your website. Get a hold of Wiley, or you can go to wiley.com and just look the book up.
Yep, absolutely.
Hope everybody reads it. I think it'll help the industry. I spent a lot of time writing that and putting it together. I hope it improves the quality of security in the industry.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think it does. You have there is so much information in here that, when I got done reading some areas, I'm like, okay, I need to kind of Google this a little bit and see if I can't comprehend here,
By the way, if you go to the Wiley site, there's about, 60, 70 video links. If you go to my book on Wiley, on the left-hand side, you can download. I put a lot of video links that are in the book.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Yeah, that's good to know.
Yep. So anyway, it's been a pleasure. Anytime.
Yes, thank you, Mark. It was great chatting with you. I'm so glad I got to meet you here a month or so ago after the lockpicks.
Of course. This was great. And good luck in the business.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, buddy. Talk to you later.
All right, Mark. Yep. We'll see you. All right, everybody. Well, I tell you what, that was a ton of fun. Great having Mark on here. And let's get into the winners this week, huh? How about that? All right. So let's go ahead and move it over here. Let's get it pulled up. All right. Now, of course, before we get into the winners, we want to make sure that we get on the same page and we know what to win. So to email us your shipping info to sales@clksupplies.com or call us at 800-848-6989 and we'll send your gifts soon. How to win. Comment on our videos with the hashtag Lockboss. Winners will be chosen from comments on the previous week's videos for our weekly giveaway. My favorite part, no purchase necessary. With that being said, let's get right in it here. Here we go. Winner number 1 this week is Lock Pro of Kentucky. Congratulations. Winner number 2 this week is ZY Zagan, I think is how you say that. Congratulations. Winner number 3 is, oh, hey, look at that. The one and only Iowa. Congratulations, Jimmy. Very cool there. All right. Winner number 3 is Nate-G3C. Nate, congratulations. And last but not least, winner number 5 this week is Robert Thompson, 4965. And I tell you what, congrats to all the winners this week. And of course, we got our free mystery hat going on with the purchase over $150, not only in the USAD free shipping, but if you add one of these to your cart, you get it for free. How about that? I like it. I like it. Oh, man. Well, I tell you what, that is our show this week. So much fun. Man, it's so great having Marc on talking about this. And honestly, if you are watching and are interested in locks and keys, which, I mean, I'm guessing all of you are, hopefully all of you are. I tell you what, the information in this is I guess there's so much information in here that I've never even heard before. And so just as you start reading and going, I find myself, okay, stop, Google, what exactly is this? It's really cool. And it's a great read. And like, honestly, I think for me, the biggest takeaway of the whole book, which it's funny because when I say this, and which I said earlier, it also makes you understand almost the whole book, which is, I think I've misquoted a few times now, so hopefully I quote right this time, but a key isn't only what opens a lock. I think that, let me, it's in the rules here. Let me find it. I wrote it down on my whiteboard over here, and where is it? Let's see if I can find it quickly as we end here. Can't find it. Maybe I can't find it really quickly. There's a lot of rules. Okay, there is a lot of rules, but no. But it's something along the lines of a key is not only what opens a lock. And once he said that, as I was going through this, and I kind of went through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes sense, and that's where the whole security. Insecurity engineering kind of comes from. So it was absolutely great. So pick a copy up. Of course, you can buy it from us. If you want to buy it somewhere else, well, hey, as long as you get the book, I think you'll really enjoy it. And if you do get it and you happen to come on to the after party or some other things, I'd love to talk to you about a lot of the concepts in the book because I learned so much. It's like overseas, there's like a whole new world out there, honestly. That's how it kind of feels. But anyways, with that being said, I can't believe we're 1 hour and 8 minutes into this thing. We'll go ahead and thank you, James. It is a key doesn't open the lock. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for watching. The link to the after party Discord is in the chat. Check it out, of course. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind to our guests, Marc Tobias. And once again, I hope you all have a wonderful and safe Tuesday evening. And we'll see you back here, same place, same time next week. All right, everybody. Take care. And hey, Julio, thank you for being good. Okay. I don't need you going off the rails, Julio, on Live with the Guest. So anyways, we'll see y'all next week.